First of all, I want to thank you for your presence here because I asked you a month ago. It was really an aggression to prepare this conference, and you were extremely available and prepared this conference. My first reaction when I saw your trees in Berlin, it was how long ago? 2, 3 years? 4 years ago. 4 years ago in Berlin. It was a funny encounter because we were introduced by a common friend, Edgar Honetschläger, a filmmaker from Vienna, and we just crashed into your new exhibition in Berlin. We had maybe 10 minutes between two meetings, and you just said, "Oh yeah, come to see me," and then in your funny, clumsy way, you said, well, wait, before I invite you, I have a flight to Los Angeles tomorrow at 6 o'clock in the morning, so I guess the only moment where we could see us is tonight around 1:30 in the night. So you invited me, and we were with Miro together and visited you. It was an incredible, for me, like a shock, a true shock. It was in this run-down old army building of East Berlin. Entering there, and you served us noodles, and it was an extremely beautiful meeting. And I want to thank you because, seeing the trees, the first thing that came in my mind is this verse of the gospel, when Jesus heals a blind man, and the guys open his eyes, and he says, "I see people, but I can't see them very clearly. They look like trees walking around." And actually, in your trees, there are so many aspects of our life, so many. And paradoxically, in these times where we always speak about the flesh, where the flesh is exalted, like sport, sexuality, and whatever, it's so emphatic that we know the kind of rejection of flesh. And so the language of the art has become even more important than before to talk about the flesh. I think there is no other possibility today to speak about it than poetry, metaphor, and that's exactly what you make. Everything is so biased, so damaged when we speak about the body and the flesh, that looking at your trees, it's a way, this symbolic language, to get deep inside, which would be otherwise impossible. And first of all, I'm extremely happy that this friendship and this work led to a work together, because you will publish soon a book at the Cora editions, and it will be an important book, this Way of the Cross of Lucas, because what I just told, the way to speak about the body, about the flesh, about the suffering of man is so damaged today that this book to me is very precious. It's in this symbolical language, so I think you will have an occasion in a few months to buy it, to speak about it, to show it to your friends, because it's a marvelous prophetic way to speak about man. And I just want to end, I don't want to put any pathos in this, but I realized how this friendship is nourishing for my life, and it's a real exchange of goods. Right? So thank you so much, and thank you already for your conference.
Thank you. I'm so touched by your words. I want to do this because it went back. Slideshow. Oh no, that's not sure. Oh, there we go. Oh, it's going back. No. But it shows Is it on? No, it's changing. Sorry. Okay. Anyway, my apologies. I'm not a technician. I was very moved by your words and your introduction because the relationship for me has also been incredibly nourishing. I first met Father Jean-Marie, then Father Paul at the bus station in Fiumicino 2 years ago. And soon after, I met Father Jacques. So these are my three wise men. And I also want to ditto what Ferrante was saying. Immediately I felt upon arriving here this kind of vibrancy and specialness of this community. And the energy of the people here, the young people, gives me a lot of hope in the future. And I wanted to just sound the same note that you said. I very much agree. So thank you for inviting me and leading me here. I will make a little introduction about, so you know, have an idea of what, when you see all of this, sort of where it comes from. So I'll start, there's a quote by a poet named Charles Olson, and he said, "An American is a complex of occasions." I don't know if this translates, but I think the idea, the main idea is that Americans are made of many things, complexities. So I was born in California, a Catholic state. I grew up in the USA, California's in the USA, a Protestant country. My family that I was raised in, my parents were Jewish, secular Jewish. However, we celebrated all the holidays. When I was 13, I asked to go to Hebrew school. I married my wife, Maud. She's 30 years married. She's a Christian woman, Catholic. So she was raised Catholic in Northern California. So just to give a kind of, you know, where this rises from, a little bit, might help. So this, I'll give a little just tour of the last 20 years. This was a painting, you mentioned this trip to Michigan, from Michigan, family trip to Michigan, and then returning to Los Angeles from this experience of the deep woods, which for me was like a revelation, because Los Angeles is a very organized city, there's nature surrounding it, but the city itself is, like many cities, most cities, is built by human beings, architects, real estate agents, selling land. Los Angeles was a paradise. It was the new Jerusalem for people to move and have invented a new life. And so this is how the city evolved and was, in fact, I think, sold or broadcast to the world. And so people came from everywhere. This painting I made just after returning from Michigan to Los Angeles, and I had this feeling, I had such a powerful experience in the deep woods that I wanted to get this into my work somehow. And so the first attempt was this kind of landscape where I just said, okay, well, what was so powerful? Well, nature, it's green. So this green came into the work. I remember this painting, I was making it at the same time listening to the radio about the reports of, from the attack on the buildings in New York, 9/11. And so as I was painting this painting, I'm hearing these news reports of people jumping from buildings. So it was quite a strange collision. How to get this powerful feeling of nature into the work, but at the same time, I'm not from Michigan. I don't live in the deep woods. I live in Los Angeles. And so I started to just drive around Los Angeles and notice things. I'm very much an artist who I see what's out my window. And what I see, what I pick up, it can be a small thing and it inspires me. So I started to notice nature in Los Angeles in a very different way after Michigan. And I saw the trees, and they look like this. And I thought, wow, why do they look like that? And then I started to really analyze. And so these are two trees planted in front of a shop, in shops on the right, a donut store. On the left, a place for lighting, buying lights. And I suddenly realized, they're butchered so that the automobiles can see the signs. And here's a car. These are very, ficus tree, maybe 40 years old, 40 or 50 years old. If it was left to grow, it would cover the sign. You wouldn't see a donut shop. Also, they're planted close to the sidewalk. So cars go by and they clip them, and so they cut them. So they're subjected to a lot of violence, the urban violence, the violence of the urban environment. Some more. This one on the right has this shape because big trucks come on this street. And so this line there is so a truck can, the truck just cut the tree because the truck's moving things. And this is clearing that. On the left, you see also very close to the street. This one is so extreme. On the left, a very busy street, Lincoln Boulevard, and here's a tree cut down to this, just one branch and a little sprout coming, but they still use it to hold up a sign for flowers. To let the people know there's a store there. Also, there's telephone lines for communication above the trees, so they can only go so high, and then they cut them at the top. This is very different from the pollarding, the French, this great French pollarding nature, confining it so that it grows stronger. This is a kind of a little more crazy. So, Los Angeles on some days looks like this. You have this smog, lots of smog, and just above it is a beautiful blue sky. So, of course, when they send the pictures and the postcards and advertisements, it's the blue sky you see. But we live in this kind of haze. And so I thought, okay, you have to take, for me as an artist, I use what is in my environment. You have to. So the trees and the colors of the smog became an inspiration. So the smog is kind of a gray, but also brown, but sometimes it's a gray and brown, but you see sometimes beautiful light in the smog because it catches the light in a different way. So you'll see orange sometimes, or pinks colors. It's very hard to describe this color. It's not, it's a new color in a way. So so that was just, I also should say these photographs, I have in my archive like 3,000 or so photographs of trees around Los Angeles, and now around the world, Italy, Germany, I'm adding Portugal, but started with Los Angeles, and this act of driving and noticing a tree and stopping and photographing it, and sometimes making a little sketch in my book, was has become a kind of practice unto itself, and in a way, it's a kind of adoption of the tree. So it's a recognition of something that is usually unseen. Because these trees in Los Angeles, they're background. They're background objects. They're not really to be, looked at too. So, I thought two things I want to do. How will I now paint nature? How do I paint a tree? And the two things that I think now we're looking back that were important was to take a background, something from the background, and putting it in the foreground. And the other thing was to honor that my impression of these trees was that they were not just nature, not looking out at a landscape that's separate from me, but they looked to me like people, like you said, like people walking or people moving, and the way they moved, they had a very, and then I thought more about this, and I thought, well, yes, we've made them also. Civilization, our engagement with them, we've shaped these trees, we've sculpted them, although not consciously, usually for unconscious, very base reasons having to do with commerce and man. So I wanted them to be like portraits. So when I started to make the first tree paintings, they were very small, like this, and so it was like a portrait, classic portrait format. And searching always to try to get these colors, these strange colors of blue. There's so many infinite shades of blue. And these were two things that occurred to me, and this is why I think when I found this, I knew I could do this my whole life. Because the infinity of the tree form, the infinite variety of shapes, was something that allowed me to connect with an idea of infinity, of this being something that goes forever, not a single tree. And so also these, with painting, the great thing is you put one little dot of a different color and it changes the color completely. And this also opens up, painters will know this experience of the infinity of gray, say, or the infinity of blue. Gray and blue seem, for me, the most infinite colors. Reds are also very lively, but these are... So, then so these are portraits. I think it was then also, oil painting is such a serious, it's a regal thing. It was something that was made to honor the aristocracy, I guess, also. And so to take these little trees that are forgotten in the background, nobody sees, and to dignify them by making them the subject of an oil painting felt somehow important. And also to transform, because I think art, for me, it's about transformation. and to transform something that I saw that was so full of pain and affliction, to transform that into something beautiful. Not that you don't feel sorry for it, it's something, it has its own integrity. Also felt important. So this line there at the bottom, you see in the middle, lower part of the tree, was like a scar, you know, something that maybe they tried to cut the tree down because it was blocking, and then they said, okay, no, just leave it, you know. But this scar became part of its life. Yeah, just to give you an idea of the sizes, the relationships. A little bigger, so you start with a small idea, little portraits, and then, what if it's about this size, you know, and give it even more of the body of the tree, give it more of a physical presence in the room. And the paint, using the paint, I also discovered this kind of metaphor of growth and destruction. Putting down a nice layer of paint, and then maybe with some sandpaper, sanding into it to remove the paint, and then putting it on again, sanding it down, more paint, so that the building of the painting, the construction of the painting occurs in layers and maybe has a relationship to the tree, how the tree itself grows and is cut and grows and is cut and grows and is cut. And then so it was just funny, to me funny, to be taking sandpaper, which you use for wood usually, and sanding a painting of a tree. It was kind of strange, right?
Wounded layers.
Yes, wounded layers, yeah. So this one also really cut that. And now giving a little more space around the tree, because then, so at first I thought I'll mirror how I see it in the city. The trees are confined by their space in the city. So I will do that. I'll confine the tree in a small canvas and put it in there and give it the same feeling of claustrophobia a little bit. But then I thought, okay, well, I'm the creator. I can do whatever I want. So I'll give the tree more space. So I thought, well, here's this poor tree, it's cut. I'll give it this space above it that is, maybe it can grow into the future, into that space. So room for the tree room for the future of the tree. And then that space became very, a question, a philosophical question or an aesthetic question. What is that space? Okay, it's space on a canvas, it's room on a canvas, but what does it mean? This is a confused tree. It doesn't know if it's fall or spring. But again, more space above it so that sense of possibility for the future. And then I ran into this wonderful quote that I felt it was very fitting for this section. I can read it. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. And so I think, in a way, this practice of adopting the trees, of painting the trees, became for me a way of redirecting my response to hostile environment. Yeah. Okay, now we show something. Now we show a little film. The first film, this is a film I made with my friend Heather Siebold, a wonderful camera woman and filmmaker. We went out one day and just filmed the trees of Los Angeles with an 8mm film, this old kind of technology. It's a black and white, and it's 3 minutes long. We can just watch it. Just watching it, I wanted to say one thing. So the length of the images, why some of them are short and some are longer, is because when we were editing the film, we filmed the trees and we had to stop. We cut if a car came through the image. So it was a kind of struggle to focus on this meditative space, to provide a meditative space in an urban environment. And so to do that, it was necessary to cut out the cars, to remove the traffic, so we have a sense of stillness. And anyway, so this was gives an idea of what things look like there. But also, I think something peaceful too comes through. Okay, back to the paintings. How are we at the time? We're okay. Okay, this one is continuing with enlarging this space around the tree. I've pushed it further, further, further. How much space could there be? And the tree would still hold this little thing, would still hold the whole thing, hold the whole image. And I found just a very little tree like this, and maybe, I don't know, 15 centimeters, would just hold a huge space. Around this time, I made a trip. Okay, I'll show you a couple more. I'll just go through them, but this is interesting because this little one, so for 7 years, the tree was always at the bottom also of the painting, of the surface, of the canvas. This painting is the first one where the second tree behind it took 1 inch a step up, making one little rising step. And this was like another revolution for me. Because then, along with having the space above, I thought, oh, now the tree, it doesn't have to be always at the bottom. It can be, moving up into the frame. It can be anywhere in the frame. The other thing I want to say, just to go back one moment to the film, it was a way also for me to change people, how they speak to me. Because I come from a family with celebrity filmmakers, and people would always see me in Los Angeles and say, oh, did you see this film? Or, oh, can you, do you know Tom Cruise? Or do you know this celebrity? And it gets so boring after a while. And then making this film and showing the film and then painting these two people would then come up to me and say, I saw a tree on La Brea. Did you see that tree? So I wanted to make the trees famous. And I think the film helped making the trees famous. More, they should be at least as famous as the people, right? Anyway, this is another one, and the backgrounds now become a little more, the space behind the tree, around the tree, becomes a little more animated and not as neutral of a background. So here is you're starting to see some kind of a different relationship between the image and the ground. So now to take a little detour to Venezia. I was in the Accademia, the painting by Bellini, Giovanni Bellini, in the Accademia of this Pietà, and I often go to museums with my sketchbook, and as Picasso once said, he's going shopping when he goes to a museum with his sketchbook. And I love this. I love to go to museums and churches and draw. So I brought my sketchbook. I'm starting to draw in Accademia this beautiful painting. And I start to notice the trees. On the left, there's a tree that's extremely radically cut, with a little branch growing, a couple branches, new shoots of life, and then you have this one on the right, a dead tree. So this kind of image of death and resurrection. And what I started to do is to just make drawings of just the trees, with the space of the foreground images of Jesus, Mary, whatever happened to occur in that painting, leaving it out, putting just the trees and negative space. And I discovered that the background, and again, this is a kind of a pattern to take something from the background and put it in the foreground. This mise en scène of the painting tells the same story of what you see in the foreground. And this was just a revelation, another revelation of this genius of these painters from Venice, where a lot of this, but also Germany, also other parts of Italy. So here's Chiara della Francesca's Saint Jerome and a donor, also in the Accademia. And Saint Jerome has his trunk of a tree there with the cross growing out of it. And the donor is coming presumably to give him money to keep his work of translating the Bible, and his tree is kind of up in the corner, and it's full. And I just drew that, and I thought, fantastic. So then, around the time my mother passed away, I was painting a tribute for her and saying goodbye, and so using this compositional device of the tree, the cut tree, and the floating high tree, and but with trees from Los Angeles, putting my own trees in there. So also with this amazing painting by Piero della Francesca in San Sepolcro, the resurrection, taking this tree on the right and the dead tree on the left, the live tree on the right, so again the death and resurrection, but and the sleeping God, and just an amazing, amazing painting. One of the greatest paintings ever made, maybe for me one of the greatest. So I wanted to do this one too. So I took the composition and the same size. I found the size. I made a canvas that size, and took the composition. Actually, in this painting, I painted the guards and I painted Jesus and everything else, but then I put it underneath the surface in the background.
With the sandpaper.
with sandpaper and put it in the background. Yeah. Yeah, because the paintings are very smooth. They have a smooth quality. And it's not uncommon for painters to sand paint in between coats. So, but you can see a little bit of the pink of the robe is, the pink of the robe remains. Yeah. And is, in a way, Jesus is lifting this tree up. And maybe that's the, so, another one, I don't know, maybe, what time did we start? Because I will go fast.
Yeah, 15 minutes.
Okay. Then another, so then this, we have another kind of resurrection painting, or uplifting painting. A tree at the bottom that was, you can see now this, what it looks like when you have an image and you take the sandpaper and remove it with the sandpaper. But here I left just a little bit of the trunk at the bottom and then said, no, let's not have it at the bottom, let's put it up at the top, ascending. So, similar, this afflicted tree at the bottom, and a sort of now, maybe like guardian angel tree hovering over to look, to take care of this afflicted one. Yeah, so, I mean, just to reflect for a moment on, you know, the finding on the streets of Los Angeles an ancient Christian subject was kind of a wonderful, wonderful accident. Or not accident, I don't think it was a complete accident, but it was a wonderful journey and a wonderful discovery. And all over museums, I would just, any time I see a tree, I would draw it. And just as in sketchbooks, this is a painting, Protestant painting by Cornelius van Dalen. And this is a painting of a tree, so the cathedral's in the background. You see the ruins of the cathedral, and now this idea that the tree will be Jesus or something, so I don't know. But I also saw trees in Los Angeles cut like this. And in the Jewish neighborhood, for some reason, I don't know why, but they reminded me of these hats, the Orthodox wear. And the hats symbolize the village in either Poland, Ukraine, or wherever these tribes came from originally. And in Los Angeles, you see on a hot day like this, they wear a heavy coat and they'll wear this heavy hat. And it's very specific to their neighborhood, yeah, where they originated in Eastern Europe. So I became fascinated with this kind of, you know, here's 3 crosses. I mean, it's also the Tau cross of Greece, the Greek cross. I think it's called Tau. Tau cross. Another one, a red one. And then I think maybe, yeah, again, this little small image. And it's something I'm amazed in these masses that we've had here of the host being this very small circle, but somehow the whole room, it has the focus of the energy is very powerful. And to see a small thing that can hold a big space is, I think, a very beautiful, beautiful metaphor. Maybe we don't have time to read all this, but we can, I think I should show the film, or should I? Okay. So this is from the Philokalia, this beautiful book of Eastern writings, and it felt appropriate to read it for the subject, but so better than them all, meaning better than all blessings, however, is the patient endurance of afflictions. And he who has been found worthy of this great gift should give thanks to God in that he has been all the more blessed, and may readily embrace hardship through the eradication of his own will and his rejection of unholy thoughts, and may thus always do and think what is in accordance with God's will. So I'm reading theology. When I'm painting, I'm looking at images, but I'm reading theology, I'm reading poetry, and these are things that really inspire me and give me hope and give me strength to go on with the work. And without them, I don't know what the point is of painting. For me. Yeah. So, thank you, Saint Peter of Damascus. Show the film, or 5 minutes do we have to show the film? So I'll just introduce it quickly, and then that will be this is a film also made by Heather Siebel of me in the studio. So I became, as you can see from all of this, there's a natural link to the Stations of the Cross, of course, and it was a logical next step to take on the Stations of the Cross, Kreuzweg, Via Crucis, after my mother passed away. And so I actually began it while she was passing away. And yeah, so this is, began with etchings, started with etchings, and it's all, I think, in this little film. It's 5 minutes long, and I think a good introduction to the project, and that could be the stopping point. Okay. Thank you, Heather Siebel, for making this beautiful film. So I'll just show a few images. I know everyone's getting hungry. I am. So the etchings were the beginning for me to learn how I wanted to tell this story. And of the 3,000 trees that I have pictures of, I started to go through all of my images and chose 15 that I thought could work for each station. So the first, condemned, Jesus is condemned or judged, different languages, different words, but this was a tree I saw outside of Milan. And it was a tree planted between two buildings that could only grow up. And so I thought, well, this is a good metaphor. The lower branches were all cut, and it was only an ascending tree. And then the light behind you see the background is like the light coming down. So the tree is going up, and the light is coming down. So the kind of revolution of this moment of the divine coming to earth as human, as flesh. And it also reminded me of so this is then, that was the etching, this is now the painting. The large, so this is, yeah, large, very large, you saw the scale of the film. It reminded me also of the first song. There's a section about the tree planted by the stream that always bears good fruit and always grows. And so and this also came from my sketchbook too. Derek Bouts, there's a beautiful painting of John pointing to Jesus on the other side. John's on one side of the river, Jesus on the other, and then his finger is intersecting with the tree, planted right by the stream. So inventing something new, but leaning on history. I mean, I had to make it in my own way, but there's so much history behind it. The second station, Jesus receives the cross, carries the cross. This is a tree in Liguria. I saw it planted along in front of a tourist hotel. And so they kept cutting the tree, so the tourists could see the Mediterranean. So this is a very... Anyway, what I saw in Los Angeles is not only there, it seems to be in any urban or commercial environments. So in this painting, it's kind of coming down to earth, kind of landing. That's how I saw it, was kind of floating down. The third station, Jesus falls for the first time. This was a tree, I think we saw it earlier, maybe in the film, the tree planted in front of a donut shop that had been hit by a truck early in its life, and so was bent, but then straightened itself out, continued to grow straight up. So this curve is part of the history. And then this was the etching, very small, and again the painting very large. So the paintings were taking all of the information I was finding in the etchings and now reinterpreting it in a larger scale with color. And
which was your favorite?
Just the last picture I have to show. I have one last picture, and I want to honor my mentor. This is maybe my favorite. It's the mother, and this series for me, the entrance point for me for the stations was my mother. Was when my mother passed away. This was the opening for me to start making this series. So in a way, this is my favorite. And then this was her favorite color. This kind of lavender. So. Sorry to go so fast, but they're really meditative paintings, but this is a slide presentation. So. And then I'll just show this maybe at the end. This could be the last one. This is my friend Lawrence Carroll, who was a wonderful artist who passed away, I think 2 years ago. And he was a very, very special person. Wonderful artist, but even more a just incredible, caring person who kind of became my mentor, and I think led me through a lot of ideas. We had a very deep friendship, and he died very kind of too young, but taught me many things, and he was always calling and checking on me. He was kind of a very, very, very important person. So I think that's it. That's a good place to end, I think. We're getting
if you're not too hungry, like 5 minutes for questions. And then of course you can come and interview Lucas personally.
I hope it was okay.
Yes.
Lucas, thank you so much. But I just want to know exactly, it must make me understand today one very special relation between the subject and the space. Between when you just call that finally, if you put the tree on the back, because I'm not speaking about photography, but I mean, fact to put the tree on that side and finally just let him like some respiration. I just want to ask you if you know I can imagine that you are very familiar with the last painting of Goya, the El Perro Semi-Enamorado.
Yeah.
And you know, it's my favorite. And you are the first one who just made me understand what is the mystery of the space in painting. Because we are not real linked with the subject, but with the space of inspiration. And the second question is, what is your relation with the trees of Zoran Music? Because the first drawings I bought in my life, I was 19 years old, and I saw the trees. Zoran Music is always linked with the concentration camps. That means if somebody sings to him, we have only the bodies, totally quite dying on the concentration camps, and he just find the energy to speak about the tensions and the drama of the story with the tree. It's the first time the two inspirations were linked for me, and you gave me all the keys of my life. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Wow. Well, the painting you referenced by Goya in the Prado, I have seen it 3 or 4 times, and it's unbelievably mysterious painting. I think it's called The Drowning Dog. Is it The Drowning Dog?
Yes, I think we are last painting.
Yeah, the last painting, part of the black paintings that he made. Yeah, the black paintings. Yeah, it's an amazing painting. It's a small image of a dog, and it's very abstract. If he didn't say it's a dog, you might even not know it's a dog. But it's a form, very small, in a large ground, large surface, and
perhaps you can find it on the...
yeah, he found it. I'll send it. We'll get it in a moment to show it. But then Zoran Music, I saw his paintings in Venice for the first time, his drawings, and yeah, he was a concentration camp survivor from Dachau, I think. And
but he did so many trees.
He did. I did see some of his trees. He's a really interesting artist because right after his survival in the 1950s, you think, he went through a horror, and he painted these beautiful cows, just these beautiful paintings of cows in the pasture. They're so peaceful and so beautiful. I love them. And then later, I think, he was able to paint the horrors of the camp, these faces and all of these, which, to be honest, I don't like that work as much. Not because of the subject, but just the way they're painted. And then the trees, I've seen some of them, they're beautiful.
Lithographies mostly.
Lithography, yeah. He lived quite old. He lived to be 95. He just died a few years ago. I think he has, yeah. Well, I mean, also, this is I was telling one of the fathers, this is a little personal, but my mother, just before she died, she said, I was talking to her on the phone and I was complaining about something to my mom. And she was old, she said, well, she listened to my complaint and she finally just said, well, that's just going to have to be your cross to bear. And I thought, what Jewish mother says this to their son? But my mother was a very deep thinker, and she was a painter, she was an artist, and very smart, not university, but self-educated, and a very, very powerful woman, very intelligent. And she really, I showed my friend Lawrence, I should show a picture of my mother, because the reason I'm an artist is because of her. She was a painter and gave me so much. And even that comment that's just going to be your cross to bear. I think in some ways it opened the doors and yeah, you can make the stations of the cross.